breakout session number 3 under the topic agriculture sector, right? Restoration. Today with us, we are going to have the Chief Executive Officer of the Ministry, Mr. Servulo Baeza, leading us in a very informative presentation. But before we begin with the presentation, allow me a few minutes to play an introductory video so that we may know a little bit more about Mr. Baeza.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Servulo Baeza. I am the CEO for the Ministry of Agriculture, Food Security and Enterprise. I'm pleased to be presenting to you this morning a brief background of the agricultural sector over the past decade, highlighting its performance and what are the plans for the future. I hope that everyone gets at least a little grasp of the situation here in Belize, the contribution of the agricultural sector to the economy, and the challenges that we face. And lastly, and most importantly, what are our plans for the future, and how, in discussion, we can probably get even more ideas on how to develop this country and to achieve the goals that we would like for our people.
So without any further delays, ladies and gentlemen, we are also going to have a question and answer session towards the end of the presentation. So I leave you in the capable hands of Mr. Servulo Baeza. You may proceed, sir.
Yes, thank you, Hugo. And let me just go into try to put up the presentation that I have. Just give me one minute.
Sure.
Okay, can you see the screen?
We can see your page, but we cannot see if you're using a PowerPoint, you need to minimize this and then click on the PowerPoint and it will open up on the page here. What we're seeing is your screen where you have the Zoom launch meeting open, the page for Zoom. So where your cursor is at the top, you need to just click right. You stop sharing the page. So you need to.
1 second, let me try again.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see the screen now?
Good to go, sir. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first, my apologies for having some difficulties with this new technology that which we have to operate under. As you may see, it's as the Dean Hugo mentioned, we're looking at an overview of the agricultural sector and the way forward. Starting off with some background. I can't seem to navigate through the presentation.
Just click on the page, it should change, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. As you can see, just giving you some background, we just gave some of farmer and farm demographics. How many farmers we have in Belize is comprised of 6 districts, and so we have 11,905 farmers. In terms of farms, we have 13,349. We have this information in what we call our Belize Agriculture Information Management System. And this system is used to store agriculture data and to conduct surveys on production. Currently, the ministry monitors the pre-planting, planting, and harvest schedules of priority commodities, those that are what we call commodities that we mostly that we produce locally. So tomatoes, potatoes, onions, quite a large variety of our vegetables and fruits. So we have what we refer to that as our farm registry. Moving on to our agriculture economic output trend, we took the liberty of putting from 2009 to 2019 to show the contribution of the agricultural sector to our economy. And as you can see, it has pretty much, we can say on average, been around 500 million as we go along from 2009 to 2019. You can see that the contribution had in 2015 was at the level of 641 million. And now in 2019, you see 500 and the contribution being only 518 million. We are still gathering information for 2020, but we feel that due to the contraction in the markets due to the COVID pandemic, there will be quite a few shocks also in 2020 that we feel that the contribution or the value of the economic output of agriculture for 2020 will be even further reduced for the year 2020. Looking at some of the particular commodities and just comparing some data from 2018 to 2019, we see that more or less our traditional products, sugarcane, banana, citrus, are pretty much held. Their own marine products has gone up a little bit, shrimp a little bit, fruits, vegetables, pretty a little some slight decline there. Again, as I mentioned, as later on in the presentation, we will explain why some of these changes have occurred. Some of our major or good performers, though, has certainly been livestock and poultry. Looking at and just comparing now our economic output, just comparing 2009 to 2019. Again, if you look at our traditional has certainly kind of held their own, except for citrus and shrimp, where you see some markedly decreases, and papaya also, the papaya industry. Some of the things that have affected us in terms of over the period, in 2008, we had a disease in poultry. In 2009, we had major infections affecting the citrus industry, citrus greening disease. In 2015, we had the avian influenza. 2016, some breakout of rabies and anaplasmosis. But so if we were to look at this and look at the previous slide, we notice that the shrimp and citrus were the ones that were mainly affected due to largely related to disease. The banana sector also experienced major productivity-related challenges due to improper management of the banana farms. We also had an effect in terms of sugar because of the lower prices due to the erosion of the EU preferential markets. And then for papaya, that industry pretty much has disappeared due to the exit of the major papaya producer, which was Frutabomba. In 2019, we had a severe drought that affected us for 6 months. And here we are showing the losses that we experienced and how many farmers were affected. It affected over 4,000 farmers. The government had to intervene. We got some support from the World Bank to provide some reliefs to the farmers through the provision of inputs for replanting and the approval of some flexible measures also from the central bank and the financial institutions. Again, even though all of this was done, the sector was still very much affected, as when we look at the data that was presented to us by Central Farm, most farmers were unable or still were not able to meet or restructure their loans and still are facing financial distress at this time. Only about 20% of the agriculture of the farmers were able to restructure or refinance their loans. We also had last year, 2020, Tropical Storm Cristobal and Amanda. Again, whilst a lot of rainfall affected not much, I would say, structural damage like to homes and so on, but the amount of water that fell on that caused flooding, and so that is where it affected our farmers. Mainly our commodities which were affected were rice, vegetables, and pasture. And then most of the same farmers that were affected by the drought now are being affected now by flooding. In 2020, COVID-19 losses, looking at just figures from March to July, again, looking at some of our major sectors: grain, poultry, vegetables, livestock, dairy, livestock, sugar, and shrimp. In terms of our grains, looking at food security, the government made a decision to close to secure corn and beans for local consumption. So the farmers who wanted to export corn and beans were prohibited so that we can have the corn and beans for our local consumption. In the case of black beans, we had to close the informal market also on that. So pretty much, well, we closed our borders basically to trade in that particular item. In poultry, because of the contraction in the market, chicks and eggs were destroyed, breeders depopulated, and so what the poultry farmers had to do was pretty much just cut down on production. In terms of vegetables, pretty much the same thing. Since we closed our borders, there was no tourism, and so there was a contraction in the market for those commodities, and that affected then the farmers, and they had quite a few losses. Livestock and dairy almost followed the same trend. The government at the time took a decision to close the informal market that we have with Guatemala and Mexico, and therefore there was no export of cattle, and that created an issue of over capacity in the pastures, where we had approximately about 35,000 head of cattle that we should have been exporting. We weren't able to sell. Right after the election on November 11th, this government took the decision to open up again those markets, and so now the farmers are selling right now, are exporting our cattle right now. In the case of the dairy sector, the same thing pretty much happened in contraction of the market, and there was a huge loss on milk that was just dumped. And at the beginning, the farmers converted the milk into cheese, and so now there's an overstock of cheese. Again, the farmers now are in a very difficult position right now, and certainly asking the government to halt the importation of specifically mozzarella and cheddar. And by and large, we have been trying to assist with that, but it's still an uphill battle in terms of our importers. Livestock, beef and buffalo. Well, I already mentioned some of these things. Sugar, again, because of we had to do certain things because of the COVID pandemic, the additional expenses. Shrimp, loss of market. Since the borders were closed and there was sort of an informal market with Mexico, we lost out on that market there. We also had hurricanes Eta and Iota, and whilst these hurricanes did not impact on Belize on our land, the amount of water that these two hurricanes dumped in the country caused major flooding, and again affected our farmers to the tune of $18 million in worth of losses. And as you can see, how many farmers? 787 farmers being affected. And this was like first you get hit by Eta first, and so these farmers got affected, and then Iota came right after, and again, almost the same farmers got hit again in terms of flooding. Most of the damage were concentrated in Belize and Cayo, in Belize and Cayo district, and along the Belize River. Mainly grains and vegetables were affected, along with the livestock in terms of the pastures being flooded, and we had to, in the Belize River Valley that we actually had to go in and move livestock from there to higher grounds because the whole area was just flooded, was underwater. So that gives us a kind of brief background of the shocks that the sector has been experiencing over the year. I think everybody can understand that the agricultural sector is open to many shocks, both external and internal. We look at diseases, you look at the weather, you look at the availability of financing, because it's such a risky business. The financial institutions are very skeptical or very cautious in the investments in the sector. But we came into government, or this new government campaigned on a platform to revolutionize the agricultural sector, and so this portion then of the presentation now moves into that area. Starting off with our mission to introduce technologies and policies which foster public and private sector investments in climate smart mitigation, water management, and other transformative mechanisms which increase productivity, quality, profitability, and create a sustainable environment for gender and youth inclusion and rural development. I think for the most part, looking at climate change and how the weather has been so erratic as of late, we really have to look at climate smart mitigation practices and new technologies to ensure we can achieve our mission. The ministry's policy and goal, from the farm to the table. The goal is to increase, diversify, and sustain agricultural production, food security, income, and employment generation in Belize by increasing farm-level capacity, improving technology and innovation, raising labor productivity, and increasing regional competitiveness. We developed our agricultural strategy, and basically we have what I did was summarize it on 11 points. The first one, to replace and substitute imports, expand exports, and strengthen the linkages between agriculture and the tourism sector. We, as a colony, Belize comes from, I would almost want to say, we have a culture of importation. We import millions and millions of dollars and export very little. We import from CARICOM or CARICOM countries. We import from the United States. We import from Central America and from Mexico. And we export very little. We import a lot of our food. Therefore, we can look at the list of things that we import and start to look at the things that we can produce and grow right here in our country. And so that is why one of our policies is to replace and substitute our imports. The father of the nation used to say, we have to learn to eat what we grow and grow what we eat. And so now that is one of the major policies shift in the ministry. But we also recognize that for us to develop and for our sectors to develop, we have to export. And so we look at the items where we are self-sufficient. We are self-sufficient in rice. We are self-sufficient in beans. We are self-sufficient in our grains. We are self-sufficient in our meats, in poultry, in livestock. And so now these sectors, now we can look at how now we can tap into the export markets now. The tourism sector is, well, at the moment, due to the pandemic, is closed at the moment, but the tourism sector holds a great potential for our farmers to, if we can enforce that link between the two and connect them, they can be producing what the tourism sector is consuming. So instead of, again, importing a lot of these things for the tourism sector, we can produce them. We have quality vegetables, we have quality beef, and we can continue to improve on those things. The other point, to support affordable financing for farmers. Again, this is one of the most challenging areas that we face. Farmers will always tell you it's very hard to access financing from the commercial banks. And even our development bank, which is like the DFC, sometimes it's still difficult for farmers to access financing. And so that is one of a key area that we are looking at and trying to see, and talking with the commercial banks, talking to the central bank, with the Development Finance Corporation, to other financial institutions like the credit unions, to see how we can try to make to provide affordable financing for our farmers. To review the entire tax system, the other point is to review the entire tax system and enact reforms to have a simplified, fair, efficient, and development-driven system. Again, because of the way our taxes are structured, we see that there are many inequities and unfairness where items that are imported come in duty-free and come from very or heavily subsidized countries. We know that the developed countries subsidize their farmers to a great extent, and we're importing some of these products duty-free. Yet our farmers have to pay duty, GST, on everything that they import to help in production, such as, for instance, some irrigation equipment, some of the inputs, packaging. So it really provides an unfair landscape when you look at how the tax system is structured. So we have to review that entire tax system and to try to make it more balanced, so that what we're importing is not competing unfairly with what we're producing. The other point is to work in partnership with the 4 traditional exports: sugar, citrus, banana, and shrimp, to increase productivity, competitiveness, and market penetration. In terms of sugar, we have to look at more value adding. We can't be exporting raw bulk sugar. We have to look at the direct consumption sugar. There's the market in CARICOM is the market that we have to look at for our direct consumption sugar. And certainly we have to be proactive and be looking at other markets. In citrus, we were at a point where we had a production of 8 million boxes of citrus. Right now we're at only 2 million boxes of citrus. So again, that particular industry has to be completely revamped. We have to see how to introduce disease-free plants, and to see how and to assist the farmers for them to replant these disease-resistant varieties, so that we can once again grow the citrus industry. With bananas, again, work very closely with them for their management systems, and also with new varieties, also with their genetics. Shrimp has been one of the industries that has been hit, I would say, by disease. The mortality, the early mortality syndrome in shrimp. Now we have been exploring new technologies where you do more intensive farming for shrimp, where you used to use ponds that were 3, 4, even 5 acres. Now you're looking at smaller ponds of maybe a quarter of an acre, but very high intensive, and where with a different technology. And we have seen that where that has been successful in other countries. We are importing that technology from Guatemala. Some of the shrimp farms are already moving to this type of production. So we're hoping that our shrimp industry will rebound. Also, the markets for shrimp. We were looking at the markets for shrimp, for instance, in Taiwan, that's opening up, and also in Mexico. To update and implement trade policy agreements. These two are specifically, we have a partial scope agreement with Guatemala, and we're also working on a partial scope agreement with Mexico. We import millions of dollars from Mexico, for instance, and we export to Mexico a couple $1,000. The trade imbalance between our countries is so large that we have to go to them and tell them, that this cannot continue. We need to be able to trade with you in a more, on a much more fair basis. Livestock is one of our major commodities that we want to trade with these two countries, but right now their duties and tariffs that they place on our product, on our livestock, makes it uncompetitive. The farmers are barely make any money of it. To diversify and become innovative in the adaptation of climate-smart systems. Again, I had mentioned earlier the effect of the weather on our production. Either you have too little rain or you have too much rain. And so we have to look at irrigation. We have to look at new varieties of the plants that we want to use. We have to look at covered structures to be able to be more certainly to be able to produce more and to be and to increase our production in different variety of products for our markets. To focus on research and development in partnership with renowned universities. We have quite a few universities in our region. One that comes to mind right off is Zamorano University in Honduras. Our minister and our prime minister visited Zamorano before the elections, and they were impressed by what that university is doing in terms of agriculture, in new varieties, in integrated pest management. So we feel that if we can partner with Zamorano and other universities, it will be Art or Kati and so on, we can certainly look and be able to tap into some of those new developments and some of those new things that they're doing to assist us here in our country. To support the increase of locally produced commodities and lead the Buy Local campaign, which has now is a Buy Belize campaign. This is being explored along with other entities such as Beltrade, such as the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry, along with the Ministry of Education. We need to formulate a campaign to sensitize our consumers that our products are just as good, and even healthier than what is being imported. To include a program for the teaching of agriculture and agribusiness in schools. Again, this is in partnership with the Ministry of Education. We have quite a few agreements with them, where, for instance, the covered structures, the greenhouses that I had mentioned earlier, we are working along with quite a few schools, putting in a covered structure at the school so that they can use it to show the students how new technologies and for them to gain the experience so that when later on they can do this then in their own farms or in their own homes. We are also promoting backyard gardening. And so again, exposing students to agriculture and for them to be knowledgeable, or to at least to have some knowledge of how to plant and how to cultivate the different products. And so it's, if you grow your own food, then you don't need to buy it. Over the years, especially in the rural communities, that has changed so much that now, even from the rural communities, you see they're coming to the market to actually buy and take back to the village. I think it used to be the other way around, where people we expect that the people from the village to supply us with the food, but now even that now has changed. To improve storage and logistic facilities for farmers. Again, this is one of the areas that we feel has been of a great challenge to our farmers. As we speak, the harvesting of onions and potatoes has started with our farmers now, and so we have to stop the importation of onions and potatoes and consume our local onions and potatoes. But we need to work with our farmers to ensure that the quality is also there. And to do that, we need to make sure that we have good post-harvest management, where the curing of the products of both potatoes and onions are done properly so that they last longer and are of good quality for consumption by the consumers. In terms of the ministry, we have a vehicle to try to coordinate the aspect of marketing for farmers, logistics, which is the Belize Marketing and Development Corporation, which assists in that particular venture in terms of connecting the farmers to the markets, to the buyers. To improve trade and market intelligence and find niche markets for the export of the non-traditional commodities. I think this is one where we feel that there's great potential. Years back, we had a thriving pepper industry. We were exporting habanero peppers to the US. That industry has pretty much died now. We need to try to bring that back along with other products. We find that there are so many opportunities out there in terms of whether it be some root crops, whether it be fruits in pulp. There's so much wastage right now in terms of what we're doing. There's not much value adding to our products, so we need to look at those items. In non-traditional commodities, certainly we feel that there's a huge opportunity there. So those are basically 11 of the points that we presented in our Plan Belize. And from these 11, we had to take, we took 5 points from there when we organized what was called our 100-day plan. And the first one, though, not in 11 points, and taking over the ministry, we felt that there was too much, it was too centralized, decision-making was too centralized. We were not really tapping into the ideas of our extension officers, of the people that are on the ground. And so one of the first things that we did was to reorganize the ministry, to decentralize, to give more autonomy to the different programs, given that we already have our mission and goal and those 11 points on Plan Belize, for them to focus on that and to see, okay, how will my program, whether it be livestock, whether it be vegetables and grains, how will my program be able to assist to achieve the goals and objectives of the ministry? And so we have reorganized the ministry, designated point persons for each program. We'll be giving them the autonomy to come up with their own plan aligned with what we campaigned on, the Plan Belize, and to hold them, and to certainly to put goals and measurable outputs to ensure that we are achieving our plans. And then the other 5 points are points that we have been working more. Out of the 11, we chose these 5 as we feel that these are the ones that we can have quick results. And so we're looking at the program to reduce inputs of food feed, including vegetables, milk, cheeses, and so on. One of the new things in the ministry is that the ministry now is the Ministry of Agriculture, Food Security, and Enterprise. And under Enterprise, we also have what we call supplies control. So, for instance, for you to import milk, you need to get a permit to import milk. And so now the ministry is in charge of milk production, or seeing to see how we support the dairy sector. And we are also in charge of giving out the permits for importation of milk. And so it's a good combination, because if we are supporting the dairy sector, so we support the dairy sector, and at the same time we can cut down on the permits of milk and cheeses, or cut down on what is being imported. The same thing for vegetables. I mentioned a while back that harvesting of onions and potatoes, local onions and potatoes, has started. So it also then goes into importation, and we cut down the permits being issued for potatoes and onions, so that our local produce can be sold. So we're looking very closely at that. The other issue that we have due to the pandemic also is that the availability of foreign currency or foreign exchange is in a critical stage. And so again, we need to reduce our imports to ensure that we're not putting too much pressure on our foreign exchange. And so while it might be a little bit unpopular at times, we do meet some objections or resistance from those companies that feel that they have the right to import and you have a right to choose what you want to consume. We really have to try to encourage them to be nationalistic and patriotic right now, and to understand that we need to protect our foreign exchange so that we can pay for vaccines or for medicines and for the food that we do not produce. But once it is something that we produce, we need to try to see that we consume our local produce. Updated sugar industry, point number 3, updated sugar industry act based on consultation with key stakeholders. The Sugar Industry Act, as it stands right now, only recognizes one manufacturer, which is Belize Sugar Industries, or ASR. We have in the country now another sugar mill, Santander, and so we need to revise. The idea is to repeal the Sugar Industry Act and replace it with a new modern one that takes into consideration all stakeholders, from the manufacturers to the producers of the sugar cane. Action plans for citrus, banana, and the shrimp industries. Again, we have put together a working group for the shrimp industry, and already we have a lot of work has gone into that, mainly looking at financing, the new technologies, and also energy. Well, the issue here is that the new technologies that we need to implement to have the industry boom is very energy intensive, meaning that they have to pretty much have the aerators operating 24 hours a day. So that consumes a lot of electricity. So we have to look at how we support the shrimp industry in terms of looking at more competitive rates for the electricity that they're using. Citrus and banana, we have just started talking to them, and we will be putting very shortly. We'll be putting up together some working groups also to look at coming up with ideas and strategies on how we can revamp these two industries. Statutory instruments that enable reduction of taxes on imported machinery and equipment for agriculture and food processing. Again, as I had mentioned before, all of these things pay taxes, and so if you want to process or you want to go into value adding, already at the onset of bringing in your equipment and your packaging, whether it be bottles or plastics and caps or labels, you're already at a disadvantage because you have to pay for these things up front. If we are able to reduce the taxes on those things, then again that can be that transforms into the production being more competitive, not only in price, but also encourages certainly the value adding in the different sectors. And lastly, policy approved for affordable financing and appropriate conditions for farmers with credit unions and commercial banks. We have met with the central bank, and we're looking at measures of how to classify, how they can help us to classify loans, how to extend the period of time of repayment for loans in the agricultural sector. they're looking at the interest rates. Right now, we have already approached the Development Finance Corporation, and we're developing an agreement with them to see we want them to, in their portfolio as it is right now, I think they're doing less than 20% lending to the agricultural sector, and we're telling them that that is not enough, that they need to do more in the agricultural sector. And so we're talking to them to make sure that how we can expand that portfolio from the Development Finance Corporation to include more areas in which they can help and assist farmers in affordable financing. We've also scheduled a meeting with the credit unions. Again, they are very interested in seeing how they can assist and how we can work along with them to again help small farmers. I would say small farmers because we feel that the large farmers tend to have more, their booking orders tend to have better, or they're more organized, and so they have access to the commercial banks. But most small farmers don't have all of that, and so they need to access either DFC or hopefully the credit unions. So those are some of the things that we are looking at. And then in addition, we have I pointed out some of the new things, or some of the catchy things that we're doing right now. Increasing productivity. I mentioned the increased refined sugar production, the citrus replanting program with disease-resistant varieties, the banana management program, along with genetic improvement and climate-resilient varieties. Those are some of the things that we are already focusing on. Expansion of non-traditional commodities. Coconuts, there's a huge market, not only for the water, but there's so many byproducts that can come from coconut, the oil, for energy generation, cogeneration. There's so much things. There's a lot of excitement on hemp at the moment. The hemp has been certainly the production of hemp is legal now, so we want to develop the hemp industry. Livestock, if we look at livestock in the north, in Drought and Corozal or the whole country, but if you look at the north where the sugar industry is composed, the livestock sector now comes second to the sugar industry, generating almost $50 million in revenue. Poultry, we've started to export poultry now into CARICOM and also into Mexico. So again, there's huge opportunities now for poultry. Milk and cheese, we are producing roughly about $5 million worth of cheese and milk and cheese, and we import like almost $20 million worth of milk and cheese and different products, dairy products. So again, the potential for that sector to grow is tremendous. Some new market penetration. I mentioned the partial scope agreement with Mexico, partial scope agreement with Taiwan. So those are new markets that we're looking at, and those are new markets that we will be tapping into. Tax reform for agriculture-related production, climate-smart technologies, the coverage structures, the meshing, irrigation, packaging equipment now for value adding. These are some, again, other things that we're looking at to ensure that we can carry out of our policy of import substitution, that we produce more of what is being consumed in our country. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope that you're able to get a good idea as to how our agricultural sector has looked at over the past 10 years and what it holds now for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baeza. Very informative and excellent presentation. We have a couple of questions that I think I saw one that was directed by Faustino Yascal. He's a lecturer at Independence Junior College. Does the ministry help farmers to market their produce? That's the question.
Does the ministry, sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. Does the ministry help farmers to market their produce?
Well, I mentioned that we have our vehicle which we use, which is the Belize Marketing Development Corporation. And so they, depending on what is the actual product, but certainly that is our vehicle that we would use to market our product. Right now, for instance, BMDC is actively involved with the marketing of honey, locally produced honey. It also is involved with the marketing of onions and potatoes, and by and large, the ministry through through beams, which I mentioned at the beginning, we look at what is being produced and try to coordinate through that data to ensure then that the farmers will be able to sell their product on the market by restricting the importation of things that would compete with them. So I think those are the areas that we do with them. And we work
May I add to you?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, Milagro.
Good afternoon, Milagro Matos from the Ministry of Agriculture. We also have a mobile application and web application named AgriLinks that is supervised and managed by the BMDC. As CEO has mentioned, we have the BMs, but we also have a link called AgriLinks, which is a platform where farmers are able to register their product, exactly what they're intending to sell, at the price, the quality of the commodity, and their contact information, so that interested buyers are able to have a link or contact with who produces these commodities. This portal has helped us, especially considering the COVID pandemic, where we had major challenges with markets, accessing markets. We had product, there was an excess of product, and where are we going to sell it? And so a lot of personnel were getting acquainted with farmers and the quantities available through this mobile platform. I invite all the listeners to check out the link. It's called agrilinks.bz. And right there, farmers are able to register and market their product. Thanks to you.
Thank you, Milagro. Thank you for the addition to, I was forgetting the AgriLinks.
Mr. Baeza, we have two questions. I will allow Mr. David Ruiz to ask his question, and then we will go to Lloyd Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ugo. CEO Baeza, I would like to commend you for that excellent presentation, very informative. And I would especially like to applaud the ministry for the efforts to promote agriculture in the school system. And I would very much wish to see it happening from the very elementary level, you know, to instill in our people the this culture for agricultural practices, especially backyard gardening. And my question is, how can we, I'm the Dean of the John Paul Junior College in Benqueviejo, and I would like to touch base with the ministry to see how we can access, how can school access these assistance from the ministry to promote agriculture in our schools.
So, Mr. Ruiz, thank you for your comment, and certainly what I will do, I'm taking down your information, and I will certainly pass it on then to our ministry personnel to go and visit you, and so that we can share our plans with you and see how we can assist your school with the programs that we have in terms of the school programs, and assist you to develop a garden if you don't have one as yet, If you do, then we provide the technical assistance and certainly try to include you in any program that we have to make sure that we have your school included in that. Okay?
Thank you very much, sir.
Sure.
Mr. Lloyd Jones, can you go ahead and unmute your mic and ask your question, sir?
Hi, afternoon. Hi, afternoon all. See you. Pleasant afternoon to you, sir.
Yes,
I was just inquiring about the Resilient Rural Belize project and how familiar you are with that project. I'm certain that your technical people might be. It's a US $20 million project that is looking at how we strengthen the producer organizations for small farmers and how we build capacity within that sector of our agricultural personnel. No? And I think it's a great project, but as always with these projects, when they end, we seem not to carry on and help our people to benefit from all of those great work that was done during the project. So I was wondering if you're familiar with it and what plans you have in place or the ministry has in place to ensure that we build on what has been delivered through that project.
Thank you, Major Jones. In actuality, even though it is an agricultural project, this particular project is under the Ministry of Economic Development. So there's a limited, a limited knowledge of exactly what all the program is doing. I know it is in its second year. I know it is doing with some backyard. There's some program with backyard chicken and so on. But one of the things that we have been discussing is to approach the Ministry of Economic Development and to see how we can, in essence, I think we want to look at it as a project that should be under the Ministry of Agriculture and should be with us so that we can do exactly what you were saying, to make sure that the benefits and the programs that are the benefits and the goals and the intentions of this project is achieved, and certainly if we can have continuity following the policy, the goals and the policies of the ministry. That discussion at the ministry level, well, I was at the ministerial level between my minister and certainly, well, the prime minister who holds the portfolio, to see if they'll be willing to switch over that project onto the Ministry of Agriculture. Because we fear that it is not necessarily, we feel that there are some weaknesses in the program as it is right now. And at the end of the day, maybe down the line, a year from now or a year and a half from now, they will realize that, it's not really working, and then pass it on to us. And then we will end up with a project that is already halfway through and not achieving the goals that it should. And then, we get stuck with it. So certainly that conversation, we have already had that discussion that we need to approach the Ministry of Economic Development and to start that conversation if we can get that project under the Ministry of Agriculture.
Excellent. Thank you very much, CEO.
Sure, thanks.
We're going to go to three other persons. We will start with Ms. Tamara Recinos. Then we would go with Ermaine Requena, followed by Ms. Angelique Ayuso.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Hugo. I thought you were just going to read the question from there. You put me on the spot. Yes, good afternoon, CEO Baeza.
Afternoon.
I'm glad to see that you're back in the ministry. I think I was a student at the time when you were there the first time around. Thanks to you and the minister from Kai, who was what's his name?
Silva?
Yes. I got a scholarship to go to Samorano, so I'm a Samorano graduate. And it was really refreshing to hear that you and the minister visited and you really loved what you saw there. I have a lot of my past students who have studied, who are now graduates from the South, from Independence High School, now Independence Junior College. But the main problem that we find when we're preparing these students is that, that the financing for Samran is pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And then the Ministry of Agriculture no longer offers scholarship. When I went, I got a scholarship from the Ministry of Agriculture. And then in my second year, it was moved over to education. And education in these past years has been very reluctant. We've tried multiple times as an association to meet with the minister to try and get him to see, come and visit Samran, or just like, you and the minister have done. So you could see that there is benefit in having students study there. It hasn't been as fruitful. So my question was, does the ministry plan to, I know you said you want to partner with Samrano, but is there any something in the pipeline to assist these students in getting financing? Because DFC, the loan is pretty steep, it's very expensive. And some of these students really and truly don't have the socioeconomic background to even pay off the loan, to get started or to even qualify for a loan. So that's my question. How will you guys assist these students who want to study agriculture and need to go outside? Because we know our situation. Most of the people who do agriculture are not from rich backgrounds. We say rich, right? But they're not from wealthy families. And so they do depend on scholarship or on at least partial financing to go outside.
Certainly. I think this new administration will be very open to this. I did not go to just to clarify, I did not get the opportunity to go to Samorano to visit. It was, like I said, my minister,
Okay.
and the prime minister who went to Samorano. And I must say that the prime minister was very excited about what he saw. In fact, when he came back and he was talking to us, he was telling me about what all he saw and how he felt that we could tap into that and how that could help us. And so one of the things that that they did when they were there was that they said that after we win the government, that they were going to go back and to formalize some sort of partnership and agreement with the institution to assist with training and even to look at scholarships and so on. And I believe that the persons that they met there, I'm not sure if it was the dean or the president or whatever, was very open to that. So I think that is one of the things that, and in fact, just a few days back, we were discussing that, and he was very, as soon as is possible, we want to go and then try to develop that agreement, formalize that agreement with Samorano. But I believe now that with the pandemic, it really showed us the importance of agriculture. And so I believe that now we can go now to the Ministry of Education and negotiate with them to say, we need to give scholarship to students to go and study agriculture. And so I think those are the things that are out there, are some options that we certainly will look at. And I'm sure now that with the change of administration, that I firmly believe that we can get more assistance from both just the ministry and also from Samorano themselves, because like I said, and repeating it again, the importance of agriculture in this country, has been highlighted so much by this pandemic. Once tourism fell, we saw that we are dependent right now on agriculture to keep this country going.
I agree with you. Thank you so much, CEO.
Excuse me, Hugo. Is this the Action Research portal?
Yes, Dr. Hajam, we're just finishing up this session, and
okay.
I was just informed, just stay on a little bit. Mr. Baeza, I was informed that we are pressed with time. We're going to entertain the 2 questions. Let's try to keep the response a little bit shorter, in the interest of time. And then we're going to go over to the committee reports.
Okay, sure.
The 2 other people that I had mentioned, please.
Mr. Ugo, I can go ahead. Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Ugo, excellent choice of presentation in regards to having us have a look at education, a look of marine education and agriculture. I listened in very intently, and I'm very encouraged by the information presented. But I'm from one of those institutions that we consider to be purely academic. And a lot of the time we tend to look aside on agriculture as being the other. But my question is, would the ministry entertain at the post-secondary level collaborating, for example, with different business courses, particularly entrepreneurship, because we do offer a degree in that at Sacred Heart, wherein these students can actually work with the farmers to create a product from their produce and possibly from byproducts and so forth.
Certainly, and that is one of the other areas that we have to look at, that people feel that agriculture is, just to go and plant and to grow, but there is a business part to agriculture, and we have to get our students, specifically our students, I would think that, to look at agriculture as a business where you can actually make money. And certainly, so that's one of the things also that we're looking at. In fact, right now, there is a project right now from the FAO we will be concentrating in the Cayo district. And so I will try to see, to bring it to our attention if we can visit Sacred Heart and see if there's any way that we can tie in that project, which does exactly that in terms of trying to, focusing on youth and women, and to try to guide them from the inception of an idea to the actual business itself, at a production of something, a product at the end. So I would certainly look into that and see if we can have any synergies there with Sacred Heart.
One more. I think I had Ermain. Rekena. Okay, all right. Well, Mr. Baeza, I take this opportunity and thank you very, very much on behalf of Centro Escolar Mexico and myself for granting us this opportunity to be here with us. Excellent presentation. I am very excited because as a school that promotes agriculture, we can only wait for you guys to get here also to see the wonderful things that we are doing in this area. And you mentioned about new technologies, right? So pretty much we have been on board with the new technologies. So thank you once again, CEO Baeza, and I know that everyone enjoyed your presentation. Have a good day, sir. God bless.
Thank you all, and welcome. It was my pleasure. Thank you.